Patrick. So now, I invite you to turn off your cell phones so you can be here and fully present. And take that deep breath and be here. So our speaker for today is Keri Mangis. She's been here before. She's an author, a speaker, a thought leader, an entrepreneur, and she currently writes for Spirituality and Health magazine and The Edge. Her first book, Embodying the Soul, A Return to Wholeness, a memoir of new beginnings, won several awards, including the 2020 IPA Award for Mind, Body, and Spirit. Currently, she's fascinated by the topics of human transformation and what that can create for both the individual and the collective. She's studied and been certified in many alternative modalities, including certifications in yoga, Ayurveda, and has also studied herbal medicine, energy work, aromatherapy, Buddhism, Hinduism, Tantra, shamanism, and more. So she puts all of these skills into her work as a spiritual guide and a transformational consultant. She offers workshops and events and is a freelance speaker. You can find her at kerimangis.com. And she's also going to be staying with her books after today's service out there in the garden room. So you can talk to her afterwards, buy a book if you'd like. With that, Keri Mangis.
Thank you. Welcome. I'm so glad to see you all out on this really gorgeous Sunday, spring in March, and I'm just so excited for the weather to continue to warm. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to get to speak here with you all today. I'm always honored to have an opportunity to be here, so thank you. And very excited always to see what the theme is going to be. It's probably my most exciting part is when they tell me what the theme is, because for some reason, it always makes just absolute perfect sense. So this month, the theme is defining integrity. And what I liked about this the moment I saw it is that it wasn't deepening integrity or building integrity, but it was defining integrity, which I love because I think that gives us a really beautiful opportunity to begin at the beginning with what does the word even mean? Because we tend to use words very casually all the time, every day. And over time, they can lose their sense of meaning. And instead of being pointers to the light and energy that they represent, they become just mere letters on a page. When we understand the importance of words, we can embody their light and their wisdom. Have you ever had that experience when you've repeated a word too many times or read it so many times that it's lost its meaning? Have you ever had that happen? It starts to sound weird and look weird. Do you know there's a term for that? It's called semantic satiation, which is quite a mouthful in and of itself. But there's another phenomenon, I think, and I don't know what the term is for it, that happens when we take and meditate on a word until it awakens inside us, until it becomes alive inside us. In Christianity, there's a practice called Lectio Divina. I don't know if any of you have ever practiced that, but you meditate on a word or a phrase from Scripture, and the idea is for it to become not just, again, those words and the letters, but actually awaken inside you. Emily Dickinson has a poem about this idea of what words can do and what they can mean. It goes like this. A word is dead when it is said, some say. I say it just begins to live that day. So starting with the word integrity, I like to study etymology. It's one of my favorite things lately. And etymology is just the study of the origin of words. Understanding where it comes from, understanding how it was originally defined, can sometimes really give us insight into what the word means. So interestingly, integrity came from the 1400s, and it originally meant innocence, blameless, chastity, and purity. which I don't know if that really works for me. Because this sounds like a kind of untested life, right? I mean, this sounds like there's nowhere to go. You're either blameless and innocent or you're not. So maybe because that wasn't working, there were some later definitions of the word integrity that I like a little better, such as soundness, wholeness, and completeness. And what I like about these definitions is they give space for their opposites, right? They give room for there to have been unsoundness, for us to have been broken rather than whole, and for us to have felt incomplete. So in this definition of integrity, there's a movement that can take place rather than just a label. Other roots, or other words that have the same root as integrity, and this can also help us understand the word, is integer, which means a whole number, so not a fraction, and integral, which is something that is central, right? A central idea. It is integral. So integrity is right in here with these words as well. Another synonym or another definition is unity. I like this one. Unity, the state of being connected to ourselves, to each other, to the earth. In alchemy, there is an expression, all is one. And there are others that are like this, as above, so below, as within, so without. And they all point to the reality that the separation we think we see is all in our minds. It's all made up, but we are actually all one. And that is a definition of integrity that I really like. Solidarity is another one. Solidarity to me brings about a state of being steady, being centered, knowing who you are, knowing what you want, knowing what your truth is, and less likely to be swayed away from that. Alignment. I really like alignment as an ex-yoga teacher. Because in yoga, when we're working on alignment, when we're talking about bringing the hips over the heels and the shoulders over the hips and the chin parallel to the ground, what are we doing that for? Why are we aligning the body outside of physical health? It's about awakening the channels of energy. It's about connecting us to our roots and connecting us to the heavens so that we remember that we are both human and divine, and that the center is our heart. When we are in alignment in our physical body, it opens up our chakra centers. And when our chakra centers are open, we have access to, these are our power centers, our root chakra, our sacral chakra, our solar plexus, our heart, our throat, our third eye, and the crown chakra. So again here, integrity is about alignment. It's about having access to your creativity, your power, your truth, your heart, your love. It's about having access to the divine gifts, and it's about remaining connected that our place right now is on this earth. Another definition of integrity that I don't like as much is honesty. They're often used synonymously, but I think that there's a pretty good difference, and I'll demonstrate it with this simple story. So you're walking down a crowded street, and the person in front of you drops their wallet. And with everybody around to see, you pick up the wallet, you tap them on the shoulder, and you return it. That's a very honest thing to do. Honesty is something that can be measured from the outside. Honesty is something that other people can say about you because it's observable. Because you said you'd be there at 5 o'clock and you were there at 5 o'clock. That's honest. It's based on the morals and the ethics of the culture. We value honesty based on what we value as a culture, as what we decide as a culture is honest. Now you're walking down the same street, and it's just you and this other person ahead of you, and they drop their wallet, and with no one else to see, you still tap them on the shoulder and return it. Or perhaps they're not even around and you just see a wallet, and you find a way to return it. That's integrity. That's doing something because it's aligned with what you think is right, and it doesn't have anything to do with what anybody else could see or observe. You are accountable only to yourself. That's integrity. You are accountable to your ideas of right and wrong. It is about your internal moral compass. That's integrity. That's the difference, to me, between honesty and integrity. One way that I think we can really understand what integrity is to understand what it's not. There's a practice in yoga called neti neti. Has anyone heard of this? It means not this, not that. And it's a practice of seeking truth by deciding what is not true. Supposedly, Michelangelo carved David because he saw David in the marble and removed everything that wasn't David until he had David. So neti neti is a practice of understanding that sometimes we learn through opposites. We learn about hot because we understand cold. We learn about unity because we understand isolation, and so on. So one thing about integrity, if you want to know what it is, you also have to experience what it's not. So I was talking to my husband about this, and he offered up a story to me that he's never told me. And we've been married coming up 25 years. And he shared this story with me, and you can tell when you haven't heard a story that it was something that he had suppressed, something that he's been embarrassed of. And he gave me permission to share this with you. So he said that it was shortly before we were married, and he was working for a company, and he was very ambitious and very excited about this job and really wanting to make an impression and all of those things you want to do. And he was on an airplane, and the seat next to him was open. And so he just sort of spread out with his things, his computer, his notebooks, his everything, and was just focused in on his work. And at some point, a man came by and said, "Is this seat taken? I'd like to sit a little closer to my family." And he said, "Yes, it's taken," and just went back to his work. And he said, to this day, that just really sticks with me as not who I am. Now, it's not against the law. It's not against the rules of the airplane, I don't think. But it was against his internal moral compass. And because he experienced that, because he experienced that separation from his own truth, he now today is the person that will make sure on an airplane that every single family that wants to sit together will be sitting together. Would he be that person if not for that other experience? And so I want to invite you for just a moment to recall an incident in your life where you were out of integrity. And this isn't about blame or guilt. This is about healing and moving forward and learning in a safe environment. And so perhaps close your eyes if that's comfortable, and let this experience awaken within you as if it's happening right now. And just notice how it feels. Again, no judgment, just notice any sense of separation or unsoundness, unwholeness, incompleteness. Notice if your shoulders start to hunch, if your heart starts to cave in a little bit. And then you can release that and just know that that's a tool for you going forward, that you always have that, what that feels like. But I know there's also been times in your life where you have been in integrity. And so I'd like you to find that now. Find that moment in your life where you were in integrity. And if you can, find one that took a little bit extra courage. So a time where you had to speak out against your family or your friends and tell somebody that that joke wasn't funny or something. Find that, close your eyes, let the experience awaken inside you. And notice the difference. And you can release that with a couple good deep breaths in and out. It's fun to do the intellectual understanding of a word like we were doing at the beginning. It's fun to look at the definition and the etymology and use our heads to understand a word, but it's something completely different, isn't it, when we use our bodies and we use our own life experiences, because then that word really opens inside you and you know. Another definition of integrity, and this one is powerful, it's fidelity to the truth. This one's powerful because it has two words in here that could require a meditation all on their own. Fidelity, which I think of as a loyalty or a commitment or an adherence, alignment. And truth. I mean, in this day and age, what truth are we talking about? Are you talking about an alternative truth or a convenient truth or a personal truth or a collective truth or a religious truth? What kind of truth are we talking about? If we're going to have loyalty to something, then what is truth? Now, in the introduction today, she mentioned a few of the things that I've studied over the years, and I have to tell you that even that's a partial list. Because once I hit my 30s, I just got a little bug, and I had to study. I was a truth seeker, and I was seeking the truth in all these modalities. And that's because I spent the previous 30 years being a people pleaser. And when you spend your years being a people pleaser, what happens is you forget your truth. Because in order to please others ahead of yourselves, you have to suppress your own truth. You have to forget it a little bit in order to align with somebody else's, in order to be agreeable. And after 30 years of doing that in my life, I didn't know what my truth was any longer. And so what I did, which is natural, is I began to seek the truth outside of myself. I got fully immersed in the world of yoga for about 20 years, teaching it, studying it, training it. I studied with every teacher I could find around this country and outside the country, every training I could get my hands on, because I was looking for certainty. I wanted something or someone to tell me that this is it. This is how you're going to find your peace in your life. And I searched in Buddhism. I searched in Hinduism. I went back and studied Christianity because that was the religion I had been brought up in, but I'd never had a strong commitment to it or allegiance to it. In fact, I had kind of a lot of fear around it. And so now that I was an empowered woman on a search for truth, I went back and I did Bible studies. And I went to church and I brought my kids and I was trying to find the truth. And I wanted one truth to be right out of all of these. I was looking for the winner. I was. The winner ended up being yoga for me. I eventually kind of slid off the other paths and just went full on yoga, because here's the thing, in yoga, they have the 8-limbed path of yoga. Anyone here study yoga? Some of you do. The 8-limbed path of yoga, it ends with samadhi, right? Samadhi, enlightenment. And if enlightenment isn't truth, I don't know what it is. And there was a roadmap to get there. And I am as determined as anybody. I'm a Midwestern woman. I'm from North Dakota. I can endure, I can push, I can drive myself really, really hard. And I pushed myself all the way to the emergency room, trying desperately to be this yoga teacher person and get to enlightenment, find that truth outside of myself, find that certainty, and then not live in the questions and the pain and the confusion and the lack of integrity. But the problem eventually showed up for me when the simple principles of yoga could not answer certain questions in my life. And there's a simple analogy that I can share about this. There are 2 yamas in yoga, and yamas are like codes of ethics. They're like the 10 Commandments, only they're do not, or instead of do nots, they're do's. And I liked that better. I liked that language better. And the first one was sattva, which is all about seeking truth. And that fit me like a glove. So sattva, adherence to truth, finding the truth, speaking the truth. That was easy for me to commit to. Another one was ahimsa. And ahimsa means non-harming. Well, that was easy to commit to as well. I didn't want to hurt myself. I didn't want to hurt my family. I didn't want to hurt animals. I didn't want to hurt the earth. I could commit to ahimsa. I could commit to sattva. There were others as well, but these 2. And you might think that you could walk through your life with just these 2 outer yamas guiding the way, but here's a simple story that shows you how they conflict. Imagine you're sitting in a forest, meditating, minding your own business, and a deer runs by, and you take just a moment to appreciate the majesty of the deer, and you smile to yourself and then return to your meditation. And a couple minutes later, a hunter comes by and asks you, which way did the deer go? Okay, what do? Do you adhere to the truth and likely put the deer's life in danger? Or do you adhere to non-harming and send the hunter down the other way? There are times in our lives where these outer rules cannot make decisions for us. They fail. That's not the truth out there. The only thing we can do in a situation like that is turn inward to our integrity, to our truth, to what's right for us in that moment with the information that we have at the time. Because there's so much we don't know. Even in that simple story, there's so much we don't know. What if that hunter's family is starving? And by sending him away from the deer, now his children are even more destitute, and maybe they go rob somebody else, or they kill another endangered species, or something even worse, right? We don't know the ramifications of our actions. We can only do what is best for us in any one right moment. And the only way we can do that is if we know our truth. Every single outer truth will eventually fail. That's where you have to turn inward. That's where you have to know your truth. And that is when I had to turn my life from seeking truth out there to just stopping all the craziness and go inward and find my own truth, which sometimes corresponds to these outer truths and sometimes doesn't. Fidelity to the truth. Which truth? This truth. Your truth. The truth that you feel. The truth that you know. My daughter took a job last week, and it was a really exciting job, and she was very excited about it. And then after just a day or two, she called me and she said, "This is not where I belong. My body, my soul, every part of me is telling me that this is not right." Conventional wisdom and her mother said, maybe give it a week. Right? She's like, I can't give it a week. That's wisdom of the body. That's fidelity to the truth. That's integrity. I think that's what we can all be looking for. When I wrote my book, I started it in 2014, and one of the main themes, as you might imagine in this book, is my search for truth and that desperation that was behind it. And one of the things that I did in this book that I know all of you will understand is that I also told the story of my soul. So I have two timelines in the book. There's my timeline, my ego, born in North Dakota, blah, 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 blah. And then there's my soul's journey that happened before she jumped into this life. And essentially what I did in this book is I interviewed her. I'm like, what were you thinking? Why here? Why now? Why didn't you make it easier? I had all these questions for my soul. And with the help of my imagination, I brought my soul to life in this book and got some very interesting answers. And one of the things that I learned was that it's just not me that's a truth seeker. So I want to read just this short section that is in the voice of my soul. I recall that I am an eternal searcher for and lover of truth, an urge that has led me on treacherous journeys across time and space, especially to the earth realm, where diverse cultural traditions are said to embody truth, expressed through religions, prophecies, books, manifestos, and philosophies. In the earth realm, entire cultures are built on a collection of shared beliefs that people call truths. But these cultures fade as soon as new beliefs gain power, which only proves the truths on which they are founded are anything but solid. Lifetime by lifetime, skin by skin, I have spoken for these incomplete truths, fought for them, died for them. But they were not the great truth, for where the great truth would unify, they have divided. Where the great truth would collaborate, they have conquered. And where the great truth would embrace, they have often separated, punished, and demeaned. My soul came up with this term, the great truth. And I love that. I love this idea of a great truth. Kind of like gravity is for all of us, right? But it's probably not, it doesn't probably exist in all the places in the universe. But at least for us, it's about as great of a truth as we can understand. I like this idea of a great truth expressed in the story of the three men and the elephant, the three blind men and the elephant. Has anyone heard this? So there are three men. They've never experienced an elephant before. They happen to be blind. The first man, they're brought up to experience an elephant, but they are all going to be touching a different part of the elephant. The first man is brought to touch the elephant's ears. The second man is brought to touch the elephant's trunk. And the third man is brought up against the elephant's side, its flank. And then afterwards, the men are asked to describe their experience of an elephant. And the first man says, you touch the ears, an elephant is thin and floppy, and it waves in the breeze like a kite. And the second man laughed at him and said, what are you talking about? An elephant is thick, it's like a rope, and it moves like a snake in the grass. And the third man looks at the other two and says, I don't know what they're talking about. An elephant is firm and solid and immovable. It's immovable. It's like a wall. And as you can imagine, this story can take two turns. They either just keep arguing and arguing and arguing about what an elephant is, which, look around, what's happening in our world, right? And they'll do this because each of them actually had an authentic experience. Here's the thing. They're all right. It's all true. And I think sometimes as human beings, we think that in order to understand somebody else's truth, we have to deny our own. That in listening to somebody else's truth, it's a betrayal of our own. And that's not true. If instead these men sat and listened and talked to each other and really believed each other, they would all have one more piece of the great truth that is the elephant in our metaphor here. And this is what I love about the great truth and the search for it, which is so different than my search for certainty 20 years ago. Because this search keeps me curious. That search had me seeking certainty, wanting answers that I could adhere to. This search keeps me curious. It keeps me humble. It keeps me wondering. It keeps me in amazement. It keeps me reading about other people's stories. This is why I love to read, because I, unfortunately, only get to live my life. But when I read books, I get to read about all kinds of other people's experiences, and it expands my overall understanding of the great truth. There's a beautiful children's book written by Douglas Wood. He's a local author. It's called Old Turtle and the Broken Truth. Has anyone seen that? I so recommend it, and especially if you have children. It's a story about various groups of people, and they're all holding on to this shard of something they call truth. Because on this shard, it says, you are loved. And who wouldn't cling to that? Who wouldn't cling to such beauty, such sparkling love, right? But as you can imagine, all these cultures begin to fight each other over who has the right truth. And it isn't until the end of the book that they all turn this piece of glass over, and on the other side it says, and so are they. That's the great truth. That's the great truth that I have loyalty to, that I have fidelity to. I have fidelity to the great truth that says you are loved and so are they. That to me is my integrity. So, one more little segment here. At some point, my ego wisened up, as I mentioned, a little bit to what seeking the great truth can really be like and what it really means to seek the great truth. And so this is written from the voice of my ego. As for the great truth, I now knew much more. The great truth never falls apart or disappears when you hold it in your hands. It is not tricky or hidden. It is not given to some and denied to others. It never makes you feel less than, better than, or separate from anyone else. The great truth doesn't judge or condemn. Instead, the great truth empowers and is inclusive, loving, unconditional, free, and always available. It opens the doors to curiosity and enthusiasm for life. It brings us into full awareness of our humanness and our remembered divinity. It frees us to be authentic and share who we are, which is the only human offering that truly matters. And hunting for it has been the greatest joy of my life. And it continues to be. And so when we're talking about integrity and we're talking about fidelity to the great truth, then we understand what this means when it's our truth. This is how we find integrity of dharma or purpose. Although I don't love the word purpose so much, it always sounds very ego-driven to me. I like the word reason, following your reason, following your curiosity, following your imagination. When you have integrity of dharma, you're where you're supposed to be. You're not living someone else's life or trying to live someone else's life. You are being uniquely you, which, as I said, is the only offering that truly matters. When we have integrity, then when we have our truth, we have integrity of personal power. Personal power is the one thing that we all seem to barter pretty easily, especially when we're young. And sometimes then you get to a point in your life and you realize you don't have a voice left. And you've forgotten that you love to dance, and you've forgotten that you love to sing, and you've forgotten to speak up for people that need it because we've lost our personal power. Finding your truth and aligning to that gives you back your personal power. It allows you to go back and reclaim it and then build it from there. So integrity is about personal power. It's about alignment of the mind and the body. How many times we're thinking one thing and we do another? My daughter could have kept going to that job for another week, another month. Might not have harmed her, but there would have been small little splits, right? Small little splits of doing something that doesn't feel like it's aligned for you, that doesn't feel right, that you can just sense it. We can handle some of these small splits. Life is going to create some of these, but if we allow too many of them to build up, there's large splits between mind and body, and one's doing one, and the other's doing the other, and we've forgotten what our heart wants. So finding that alignment, finding that integrity of mind and body. When we have our truth, we can find integrity in our relationships. We know what we need. We know and have the wisdom to understand when they've run their course. We know how to let go. There's so much power that comes from being in this space of alignment and truth. When we have our truth, we have integrity of the soul, which to me means a commitment to transformation. Not just change, not just, I used to eat carrots and now I don't, but transformation, full on allowing yourself to break down so that you can rise again from the ashes. We're meant for this. Human beings are meant for transformation. That is one of my great truths. We're meant for transformation. It is my belief that no soul would come into this journey, into a human body, into this skin for a handful of decades, just to hang out. We're here to transform. We're here to change. We're here to try things. We're here to grow. We're here to expand. We're here to get challenged and uncomfortable. That's integrity of the soul, living a life aligned with the soul. And you don't have to write a book, but you can start to ask your soul, and I guarantee your soul will tell you that it craves that kind of life. And integrity to yourself, staying committed to what matters to you, staying in curiosity, staying in a place of co-creation, remembering that you are connected to all things and that we are all co-creators and that we are all creative. And this kind of life takes a great deal of courage. And to me, integrity is about having courage. Courage to live the life that matters to you, courage to live the life that your soul wants, courage to live the life that you wanted, not your parents. And courage is so much different than confidence. And don't confuse the two. Confidence is an ego veneer that we put over to hide our vulnerabilities. Courage is that inner fortitude that allows us to move through our lives with our vulnerabilities right on the surface. That's courage. That's doing things not because you're confident, but because you dare. So I want to end with a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. about integrity and courage. The greatness of a man is not in how much wealth he acquires, but in his integrity and his ability, I can't read that, to affect those around him positively. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. May you all find your courage, your truth, and your integrity. Thank you.
Keri will be doing the closing circle. Remember, we're an independent organization, totally dependent on your donations, and this building needs a lot of help and repairs, and whatever you give helps us to continue to offer wonderful offerings within this building. So dig deep, and as ushers are coming down and you're digging, I also want to remind you that you can also donate online on the website, and that's helpful if you become a regular donor, a sustaining donor. That really helps the organization, so we're not going through this, but we go through this. Okay.
Mama, dear mama, look in yonder tree. See that pretty little sparrow looking back at me. She can soar above the clouds, way up in the sky. She can fly away from here. Why can't I? Daughter, dear daughter, I'll tell you something true. Remember Granny Liza. Well, every night she flew. They tried to keep her down, but there was nothing they could do. She could fly, she could fly. She could slip the bonds of earth and rise so high. She could fly across the river, the spirit in her hand, searching, always searching for the promised land. Mama, dear mama, mama, tell me more. I feel a trembling in my arms I never felt before. Daughter, dear daughter, listen what I say. Your granny always told me you feel that way someday. 'Cause every time she looked at you, she saw the old time ways. When we could fly, we could fly. We could slip the bonds of earth and rise so high. We could fly across the mountains together, hand in hand, searching, always searching for the promised land. Mama, dear mama, come and stand by me. I feel a lightness in my feet, a longing to be free. My heart